we're seeing new buyers coming into the industry drawn by the idea of implementing AI and wanting to use AI as it's a more cost-effective solution to get greater global access to meet language access requirements and so on. That's definitely a trend.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the year-end 2024 episode of Slater Pod. Hello, Esther, and hello, Anna Wyndham.
Hi, Florian. Hi, Anna. Hey, Florian. Hey, Esther.
All right, so we brought in Anna Wyndham, our head of research, to understand a bit more how she sees 2025 and a quick 2024 recap, and we're going to talk predictions. But first, Esther, we're going to have to do a quick news roundup, a few deals that closed this week and last week, and then a few interesting things around that they're happening in the UK. Your House of Lords took it upon itself to opine on AI and language, and then RWS also posted their annual results. And I want to talk briefly about YouTube now opening up their dubbing function, and I want to share a quick video there. So why don't we get started with LXT, a company that's doing data for AI, like similar like Appen, that actually did an acquisition. And we very rarely hear acquisitions from this part of the kind of extended language services space. So why don't you tell us more?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as you said, LXT, based in the data for AI market, has completed an acquisition. LXT being based in Toronto, they are now planning to acquire Clickworker, which is a German platform managing millions of freelancers that are working with data for AI. So the deal is not actually yet done. It's expected to close in mid-January. It's one of these that presumably needs to go through various legal and regulatory approvals. But yeah, it seems like a sort of interesting, a potentially sizable deal. You've got on LXT's side, it was founded back in 2010, serving lots and lots of different countries, 145, they said. And we have a quote from the company saying the LXT achieved tremendous growth of 4x. I think that was over, I can't remember, a few years of a period, not just 1 year, but I think sort of 2, 3, 4 years or so, but nonetheless getting quite a bit of traction there. And then through the Clickworker deal, they are expecting to help double revenues in 2025. So projecting again big growth into 2025. For Clickworker, so this Clickworker was actually founded longer ago in 2005. It was formerly owned by, also backed by sort of private equity VC money. And it has 6 million crowd workers. So a
6 million
crowd workers there, if
That's
you can
a lot
imagine.
of people.
A lot of people management across Europe, the Americas, and Asia. So really a global spanning operation there. So I guess the question being, why potentially are we talking about this or covering this? On the one hand, we do cover the likes of Appen, which is also in the data for AI space. Obviously, equally, many language service providers are also somewhat active within the data for AI space, having kind of branched out into some of those services over past several years. Also, we had LXT's Chief Revenue Officer, Phil Hall, on Slater Pod nearly 2 years ago now, back in January 2023. So while LXT doesn't sort of specialize in translation or localization per se, clearly the work that it does is feeding into translation applications. So use cases like AR and VR, computer vision, conversational AI, search, and of course, NLP.
Yeah. And Anna, you have a background in this. Any thoughts? Because you used to be, or way back, you were with Appen.
Yeah, I started with Appen, and LXT has had an interesting trajectory here. They did start in 2005. They actually kept a very low profile for the first 5 or 6 years, and just started to raise their profile and get themselves more well known in the market in the last couple of years. So it's interesting that they've done this acquisition now. And I guess the other interesting aspect of this data for AI market is how many synergies it has with language services. And we see obviously a lot of LSPs expanding into this as an adjacent service. And I would expect that to continue to happen as more and more companies are looking at how they can utilize their own data in AI models and looking for support in those annotation and labeling tasks. Despite the fact that unstructured, a lot of AI training is done with unstructured data, there still is this need for structured data, and especially for specialized data for fine tuning. So
it's an interesting market. Also, I think it's at the cutting edge of current AI industry, or not industry, AI community discussion, right? So there's these two factions. The one faction says basically the models are going to scale, like the data. Let me try to summarize this and not butcher it. Let me take the other side. So one side, obviously, kind of talking their book, is saying like these like LXC, like Appen, like Scale AI, saying like we need more data now, human quality, human label data, to actually make sure that these models don't hit a ceiling, right? And the other says no, we don't. Maybe you can have synthetic data and other things to make the models better. And I just stumbled across a podcast recorded with Alexander Wong of Scale AI, the CEO of Scale AI, where he's obviously like for 30 minutes basically saying, no, you guys, we need more data. So otherwise these models are going to hit a ceiling, right? And obviously, that's in his very own interest. But, Scale AI is kind of the Silicon Valley grade competitor of LXC, of Appen, and all these other companies. And then, LSPs have found this a very good niche for them to go into as the translation business is under quite a lot of pressure there. So interesting acquisition. Also interesting that this is almost the first time, it's the first time in a long time that we're seeing like an M&A deal in that particular space. Appen did a couple of deals, but it's been forever.
And we had the Lionbridge, don't forget, spin-off data for AI
Lionbridge
acquisition
spin-off
by TELUS. Yeah.
That's like 4 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
It's a long time ago. So not much happened. And now we get that deal. Maybe this is kind of the first of many. So let's observe that space. Cool. Esther, another funding round, seed round, quite a big one, $4.2 million in seed round. That's not bad for a company called EaseDubs, EZ-Dubs. That
I was calling it EZ-Dubs.
There you go. It's probably because the AI domain was available. So EasyDubs, is it an AI dubbing company, Esther, or not?
Surprisingly, no. Yeah. Well, at least not on first appearance. Maybe that's where they started somehow. So it's somewhat of a misnomer. It's more of a speech translation startup catering to sort of applications like Zoom and Microsoft Teams and Google Meet. So on the one hand, messaging platforms, and then also meeting environments as well. But as you said, EasyDubs has raised $4.2 million, quite a sizable seed round. They have two models. So one would be for voice cloning and maintaining emotions, and the second one for translation, with the translation model being able to manage interruptions, which is obviously pretty useful in meeting environments. And apparently also the translation model can start translating internally before a speaker finishes their sentence. So presumably sort of aiming for pretty speedy. I don't know if it's low latency because I don't think it's sort of super quick. So it's not live necessarily as far as I understand, but at least like very, very short kind of turnaround of delivering those translations. So you've got the app, which currently supports 20 source languages and 34 target languages. And seemingly EasyDubs can handle multiple languages within one conversation, which I think is sort of necessary for the use cases that they're pursuing, which is essentially people potentially communicating on WhatsApp, for example, with somebody that doesn't speak their language. And you've got, so necessarily people would want to reply in other languages. It's pretty early stage, or sort of recently launched. They actually started, I think, back in July 2023 with a WhatsApp bot and then launched an early version of the app in 2024, I think in beta. And they now, coinciding with the seed round, are doing the out of beta launch of an app that actually, so it does translate calls in real time. So they do have that sort of, emphasis on real time communication. And then going to the sort of volumes, they say hundreds of calls are placed each day, and there's an average call time of 17 minutes. So yeah, facilitating those sort of multilingual communications. Yeah.
So hundreds of calls gets you 4.2 million in seed round. Okay, congrats. In good old times, you might have needed 100,000, but here we are. It probably shows a little bit of product market fit to those that are going into this.
Would that be not hundreds of thousands of minutes? I don't know. It's still a lot
or calls,
of minutes,
but
right?
yeah, but it's what a competitive space. I mean, how do you differentiate this from just like whatever, WhatsApp adding their own thing, or Meta or Zoom or all these other companies?
And it also doesn't, at the moment at least, seem to have a particularly sort of B2B spin. They say the target audiences is more for sort of people dating across cultures, or
okay, that's fun.
Or,
hey, I can't.
Yeah, that is fun.
The app's down. We can't talk.
Yeah, the apps. Yeah, exactly. Or obviously the sort of classic travel use case where you're trying to communicate with the locals while traveling.
Yeah, there's probably other apps. Anyway, good luck. Seems like a very tough space to be in. Now let's go to the other end of the extreme, from people dating across cultures to RWS, who had to publish their annual results for the full year financial year 2024. So the TLDR is not bad, kind of modest growth returns if you calculate it based on if you strip out the foreign exchange, basically, right? Because dollar and pound and all of that. But I think in pounds, it's actually not bad. And they, so revenue is basically flat, 718 million pounds. So actually interesting that this is so stable. Also adjusted profit before tax, about 100 million pounds. Also super interesting, 2 year into AI revolution, biggest listed company in the space, barely budgets. Sure, no longer grows a ton, but also no major impact yet, which is interesting. Also that Ian El-Mokadem, the CEO, that's who's leaving, and Benjamin Faes is now coming in.
Cousin, yeah.
My distant cousin from Belgium or France. But the outgoing Ian said that their AI center products and services now account for about 180 million pounds, so a little bit over $200 million in group revenues, right? If you lump all these together. And that seems to so that's things like Train AI, basically an LXT app and competitor, right? Language Weaver, and their new offering called Evolve, which is kind of, you have all these big super agencies, like they're putting these offerings together. I think Oculus is called Leah, Lionbridge is called Opal or something, and We Localize is, I might be mixing them up, but all the big super agencies have these kind of integrated AI offerings now. So with RWS, they're seeing traction for these. And the interesting thing is the shares reacted really positively. So if you pull up the share price on a, let me just pull this up here, on a weekly basis. Yeah, so basically on a year-to-date, RWS shares are still down 27%, but on the month, they're up almost 30%, right? So basically kind of went through the trough has been reached, and now they're going up again, which is very similar to a company that we also had on a podcast a couple of years ago, AI Media, transcription, right? So people kind of lost faith when Whisper came out, and then AI Media really kind of scrambled and made it into a subscription offering, acquired a tech asset. And for them, I mean, it's even more stark. I think the shares are up 200% in the past 12 months. So I think you may be seeing the first kind of signs of investors understanding that there is a life after the disruption. And yes, a lot of companies are going to be struggling mightily, but there's going to be winners here, and those who can actually leverage AI and build, a good service and increasingly more tech business on top of it are going to, going to be really valuable. And that's why you're seeing AI media, 2xing, 3xing, and RWS now also kind of starting to climb out of that share price hole they kind of fell into over the past 5 years. So yeah, very interesting. Now, let's go to AI dubbing. Anna, have you checked out AI dubbing? Have you stumbled across an AI dubbed video?
Not in the wild, only by seeking them out.
I think I definitely have. I mean,
you have?
in our house we watch a lot of YouTube, and specifically YouTube Kids. So my 2-year-old is absolutely crazy for sort of, I guess, sort of like children's reality TV, where they just sort of watch other children playing. It's really weird, but a lot of them seem to originate from other cultures. So I think they're like in the Philippines. She watches a family from the Philippines, a Ukrainian family. Anyway, they all have dubbing. Not all of them, but some of them are actually sort of speaking English with accented language. But then, more so recently, we notice a lot of AI dubbing. Or I'm presuming it's AI dubbing.
That is fascinating. All right, fascinating. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, you want to make sure she doesn't watch too much of this. Like there's a rabbit hole you fall into, they get totally hooked on it. So let me share one thing I came across, and it took me 5 seconds, maybe 7 seconds to like, is this now the AI dub thing? Because YouTube, okay, context. YouTube now made AI dubs available to hundreds of thousands of creators who qualify, accounts that qualify. And how do you qualify? We actually qualify also, Slater. You need to have like 2,000 plus subscribers. You need to have a certain amount of hundreds of view hours per month. You need to upload a certain amount of content. And then you qualify as a YouTube contributor that gets paid from YouTube, right? You need to sign up to an AdSense account and connect a few dots and things that we actually haven't done yet. But then you can start monetizing your YouTube channel. And I think all of those guys or all of those accounts are now getting access to this AI dubbing feature. And so let me share one that I just came across. And I'm not even sure if they're 100% aware that they're AI dubbing this. But don't ask me how I came across this video. No judging. So now we are looking at this. It's a car review. And audio track is German original, and now English is the AI dub version. So let's listen.
Everyone, I mean really everyone, every car nerd has talked about it, about the new BMW M5, and we showed it to you statically, but today we are going to drive it. How does it drive? What's the deal with the weight? How does 72 horsepower and 1000 Nm drive in a BMW? Yes, that's exactly what I'll find out today at the Karish Review, the heavyweight of car reviews. Every day at 5 p.m. we have a very, lightweight review from Jesse, and by that I don't mean the content, and a heavyweight, muscular one from me. I'm Jan, subscribe to the channel. Exactly. Now what are...
All right. It makes more sense in German. So I think it started off somewhat promising, maybe the first 10 seconds, but then it kind of fell apart a little bit for me. Like it repeats the yes, it doesn't. I'm not sure. Is there any added value in this? Like maybe we can let's keep going.
9.7 wide, 51 high, and has a 3.1 wheelbase.
Then we
talk about the drive concept. Now many have said, but it has become difficult. I think it would be difficult to bring an M5 onto the market that is not a plug-in hybrid in terms of exhaust and emissions regulations.
Okay, that's not bad.
So don't be mad at BMWs. If you are mad, then be mad at the politicians. But why this car is better than its predecessor even though it accelerates more slowly? That's what I'm going to try to explain to you today.
All right, I think that was not bad. I guess you get the gist of it. The voice is surprisingly bad, though. I mean, if you look at all the 11 Lab stuff, like why is it so robotic? I would have expected a better voice from YouTube. So yeah, this was a car review. It's a big channel. They have 191,000 subscribers. This video already has 18,000 views. So I don't know, Anna, thoughts?
Yeah, well, the intonation is really noticeable, just the monotonous tone. And as you said, it really is lagging behind the state of the art, which is now capable of much more expressive dubbing and able to, I don't know if mirror is the right word, but translate the original emotion from the source into the target. So that capability is definitely there. So it's very noticeable and makes it difficult, I think, to continue listening to the video because of that feature. But apart from that, I thought the accuracy of the machine translation was quite good. The pace of the speech was good as well. And in terms of the value it offers, well, it unlocks the video for people who don't like reading subtitles.
Good point. I think the second part was better when it was more technical. I think in the beginning it basically broke down because he might have used some jargon. He might have had some kind of very, very kind of colloquial German structures, and then it kind of just broke down. But when he talked about the politicians, the standards, the things like that, it worked. Also, it had I think it said like it had 72 horsepower instead of 727 horsepower. So it like that was just one translation error I caught. Not sure. I'm not sold on this yet. I think it's who would listen to an hour of this?
Well, actually, an interesting theme has emerged in some of the interviews we're doing at the moment with interpreting providers, and that is people who are not used to listening to high quality dubbing and high quality interpreting have much lower standards for the type of expressiveness and the naturalness that they're expecting in synthesized voices, and that they have a much higher tolerance for this type of tone. So perhaps it depends a little bit on the audience as well.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to figure out that. I mean, the voice seems surprising because that's not state of the art at all. I think you could, I just did a test with 11 Labs last week, and I mean, basically, you can't tell anymore that it's that it's an AI voice. It's perfect. So interesting that maybe that, and this is not even live here, so it has time to process and make improvements. All right, yeah. So don't expect this feature on SlaterPod anytime soon. I think it'll break, but we need to sign up for this and do it like the next podcast, maybe and have it AI dubbed into German.
Some testing.
This is going to be fun. All right. What was also fun, moving on from YouTube to the UK House of Lords. First, Esther, what's the UK House of Lords? Can you give us a...
Oh, no, don't ask me
Come on, please, 20 seconds. What is it? Is it do they have any
Do you know
power?
what? I think Anna should probably tell us about this. Having
I
lived
should
in
point
the UK
out-
as a foreigner for many years, you're probably
I did
better
pass
served
an
than I.
exam on this. As I understand, it's an unelected upper house of parliament.
Hereditary peers, is that what they would call them? I guess something like you pass it on to your son or family. All right, that was a quick history lesson. It's been around probably since 1200. Now, why would that particular esteemed upper house look into language services at the judicial level? Why wouldn't that be with the House of Commons? Like, or is that just something that the House of Lords does generally? They look into government procurement things, or we don't know.
I mean, I think they look at lots of different issues, and one of the key things about, well, I guess as with the Parliament, is that the House of Lords is cross-party, so lots of like representation across different, different politics, and I don't know too much about how sort of, I guess, issues get allocated or raised, but I think essentially the Lords themselves can sort of choose certain issues or kind of champion certain issues that they care about. So whenever you're reading about something around language services, you tend to see some of the same names come up again and again, like on the Lord or the Baroness side, people who are kind of looking into this particular topic. And I think at a certain point, now that it's become an inquiry, it's formalized, they would have certain members of the House of Lords be like dedicated to the inquiry and somehow responsible for it. This one is a short-term inquiry that's looking into different aspects of interpreting and translation in the courts. So it is sort of somewhat limited in scope, although it is, that's pretty broad also. And trying to talk to lots of different stakeholders and suppliers also that would be involved in court translation and interpreting.
So, yeah, we don't want to unpack the whole thing. I think it's a little too complicated. You can go on the NRSPI website. I think the Chartered Institute of Linguists covered this really well. They made an open letter. We covered it on the website. But yeah, it's just kind of a broad inquiry into quality, suppliers, and then there's the structure apparently, and where I think a company called The Language Shop is basically doing mystery shopping of what the big word is doing, and so it's quite an interesting thing, and that's kind of a multi-day, multi-week process there in the House of Lords. They even brought in I think Dee Bell's head of legal and like all kinds of other stakeholders of the industry to learn more about it. What I want to just kind of unfairly point out is that analogy that one of the lords. Maybe you can start this. So Lord Willis of we need the Brit to say this.
Knaresborough, yeah.
Knaresborough. Okay, so they were saying, they were reacting to the Language Shop directors saying that they're not using AI in their QA processes yet, and that they don't have any plans to use AI to do QA. Kind of understandable at this point for QA. Well, isn't that the last resort where you kind of still want to have the humans check something, right? But then Lord Willis of Knaresborough said that, what did it say? I find that very disappointing, to be honest, because we are clearly in a situation where AI and other technologies, not just AI, will play an ever more significant role in maintaining quality services. And then what else did Lord Willis of Knaresborough say? Esther, you're going to have to read this in with a British accent, much better.
Sure, the same person in a different accent. He said, if you're not doing anything at the moment to introduce that, being AI or technology, either by training people or within the operation, then that's a big issue and we should address to the government.
And then the next one is the choice quote.
The next one is from Lord Porter of Spalding, sort of agreeing with his peer, Lord Willis of Knaresborough, saying, surely if the health service, there's more sort of context or sort of preamble to this, but he's saying, surely if the health service is starting to embrace this technology, your industry must embrace it. From a consumer's perspective, yours is a pretty safe place to put it in. It is just languages. It's just language. I'm butchering it myself. It's just language. The consequences are not as dire as they would be in the health service.
But it's still language in courts, and courts are kind of all about language. So, what do you do in courts? You talk, like one gives a statement, the other one gives a statement, and then the courts pronounce a verdict, and this is all language. So to me, it seems that language would be quite essential here for the proper carrying out of justice. So I think, it's a bit of a mixed, metaphor analogy that Lord is kind of drawing there. And but interesting that this would be the perception at that level of society, that it's just language. Can't you guys just kind of deploy AI? I don't know, Anna, any thoughts?
The comparison with the health service is interesting. I'm not sure if he's speaking specifically about the NHS in the UK embracing AI, but we know that the healthcare organisations are embracing AI, but with a very strong understanding of the risks involved in doing this, in a great deal of collaboration with language service providers, pilots, testing, and so on. And so I think that awareness of the risks is very present in the healthcare and medical side. So it seems to be lacking in Lord Porter's understanding of the scenario here for legal, but it's just as relevant here.
And I think one of the outcomes of this was the whole process here, that they postponed an RFP.
The last sort of update that I heard or read was that the Baroness Morris of Yardley, during this same audience, was urging the MOJ to pause the ongoing tender. So there's an ongoing tender for language services, but it's not. Maybe if
because
we
of
leave
AI?
it there. Well, it doesn't sound like it from the parts that I've read. Essentially, there's wider concerns, which, again, lots of interpreters working within the UK court and other sort of government or public sectors would identify. So the Baroness Morris was talking about poor remuneration of interpreters, And then also inconsistencies in data about complaints. Lots of different things that would be sort of super tricky to unpack, but not sort of. It's not like we're not using AI. Okay, cancel the tender. That's not sort of cause and effect. I don't think right there. One thing I would say is that in our coverage, in our article, it does link to something on the government or the court's website, which there are transcripts for anyone who's super interested in essentially what was said during these audiences with some really esteemed members of participants of the UK language industry. There are transcripts for anybody who would like to actually see what was uttered during those meetings.
And then you can stick the transcript into some type of AI, get the summary and the bullet points, and then produce a podcast on Google Notebook LLM, and then we're out of a job. No. Okay. Let's move on to 2024 trends, key events, and then predictions. Anna, as head of research of Slator, your day-to-day job is to evaluate the big picture. So what was, for you personally, the top 2, 3, 4 things in 2024?
Yeah, the big trend, I think, of 2024 that really stuck out was this breakthrough of speech-to-speech translation. I'm not sure if we can say to mass adoption yet, but it's certainly being adopted at a very rapid pace. We see these RSI platforms like Kudo and Interprefy introducing AI speech translation late 2022. And talking to those companies now, what we see is a real shift in their service model from human-centric or remote focused services to a more dual service. So they now have these two major revenue streams, human and AI. And both of those companies have pointed out recently, Kudo at SlaterCon specifically, that AI is a major revenue stream for them now. And what they're seeing is very rapid growth in the adoption of AI speech translation for various use cases, conferences, business communications, webinars, and so on, as well as the speech-to-text offerings, so live, multilingual, and translated captions. And I think an interesting insight that's come out of discussions that we've been having with these companies is this idea that demand for human interpreting and AI interpreting is mutually reinforcing. And a few different providers have mentioned this or picked up on this. So while we're seeing new buyers coming into the industry drawn by the idea of implementing AI and wanting to use AI as it's a more cost-effective solution to get greater global access to meet language access requirements and so on, that's definitely a trend. But another trend is that some of these buyers are using the AI speech translation, finding it doesn't quite meet their needs, and then moving over then as an alternative to human interpreting. So I think that's a really interesting dynamic that's coming into play and that a few providers have mentioned. But just in general, really rapid adoption is being seen for these, I guess, I don't know if we can call them RSI platforms anymore, interpreting AI and human interpreting platforms. And then on the other side of things, we also have this huge stream of speech translation releases from AI labs. So OpenAI's advanced voice mode. We see DeepL moving into the space with DeepL Voice. We've got all of the niche apps, some of which we identified in our 50 under 50 list. Mabel AI for medical use, Birdhouse for sales calls. And we've mentioned already in this, just in this podcast, various providers. So we did predict a year ago that this would be the year of speech-to-speech breaking through, and I think that has been the case.
Tick. We won. We did it. Great. So
Pat on the back.
Yeah. Next, what's next? So speech-to-speech adoption, number 1. Number 2?
The next big trend to highlight is this translation as a feature trend. And I know you've spoken about it on the podcast recently because we released a report on this showing 20 cases where translation has been deeply integrated into everyday software. And this is obviously being driven by the LLM era. So just for listeners who may not have, if you're not aware of how we're using this term, we're talking about when translation is integrated into everyday software such as, for example, Typeform for survey translation, project management tools like Monday.com, Asana, and all of these other tools that companies have deeply integrated into their tech stack, they're using every day. And now it's possible to translate content, both text and speech, within those apps at the touch of a button. So we see companies very keen to implement this capability. And the reason that Seda, and Florian, you can elaborate on this, but the reason we picked up on this as something that's important is that it's really changing how translation can be consumed. It means that a lot of simple translation needs can now be handled in-app if companies want to do that. And so then companies that have translation needs can make this decision. Do they stay inside the environment they already work in and utilize these capabilities, or do they move outside those, go to language service providers, language technology providers, or even some of those standalone language AI providers? So they have all of this choice now, and this is, of course, really shaking up the competitive landscape.
Translation as a feature. Number 2. Number 3, big trend 2024.
Third big trend, I just wanted to highlight the AI, I'm calling it the AI shake-up in localization roles. And we went into this a bit in our jobs report. We looked also at linguists and language service provider roles, but we also focused in on these roles within companies, head of localization roles and director of, say, globalization, how these are changing and becoming much more tied to enterprise AI ambitions. So we have companies that obviously want to integrate AI broadly across their business to achieve their business goals in many ways. And this localization role is becoming more, has the potential to become quite an important part of that. So we see job descriptions changing. We see these roles like AI localization analysts popping up. We see different requirements, different skills like AI integration and data analysis being added to these job descriptions. So that's a bit of a shake-up in terms of the type of roles available for localization professionals.
All right, that's great. So we got 3: speech-to-speech adoption, translation as a feature, AI shake-up in localization roles. And now let's go to predictions. You got 2. I have a couple. Maybe Esther, if you haven't thought about it, think about a couple as well. So why don't you start, Anna? Prediction number 1.
Prediction number 1. This one is pretty counterintuitive, and that's why I included it. So I'm predicting rapid adoption of language AI in the public sector and government, possibly outpacing in enterprise. And this is based on signals that we're getting from different areas of the industry in AI interpreting and also machine translation. And despite the fact that public sector and government are usually seen as more risk averse and more resistant to AI adoption, the signals coming from AI speech translation providers and others is that they have a huge appetite and unmet need to expand their language services. And because they have much more, or they can have more restrictive budgets and more pressure on cost efficiency, there's a huge appetite to start to utilize language AI in day-to-day operations. So they're starting to have conversations with language service providers, interpreting providers that have AI capabilities, talking about what use cases can we apply this to. And in some cases, the adoption of various solutions is outpacing that than what we see from private enterprise and industry.
Maybe let me add to this also that I think people should go to this New Jersey story we had recently, where this nonprofit was basically building an open source toolkit which enables U.S. states to go directly to the Claudes, the OpenAIs, all these maybe Meta, these foundational models, and build translation agents on top of them, right? So cutting out everybody else in the loop here. So also state actors there in the U.S. Okay, cool. So that's prediction number 1. Prediction number 2.
Prediction number 2 is that despite this potential or possible slowdown in major AI releases and performance breakthroughs that is being talked about generally, the prediction is that industry adoption is going to continue at a very rapid pace. And the main reason for saying that is that the capabilities as they are have not yet been anywhere near leveraged to their full potential. So we see LLMs starting to be used in place of or as well as machine translation. We have these quality estimation workflows. We have speech-to-speech. We have all of these multilingual content generation capabilities. So all of these are still at pilot or operational phase. So even if there is kind of a bit more peace and quiet on the big announcement side, I think the activity and the adoption is going to accelerate, if anything.
Yeah, I've never seen an environment where like the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Was so accurate. It's just it's here, and you could do so much more, but it just takes a couple of years to
Mature.
to mature for instance to catch up. All right, and I have a few predictions of my own. So TMS, I think, is continue to win share as the kind of application layer for language enterprise language AI, because I think TMS sit at this very fortunate intersection of making all these advances that we just talked about very practical for enterprise users. That's one. Another one would be, I predict and hope there will be an IPO by some type of language technology, maybe language services company. It's been years and years and years since the last IPO. And there's a number of companies that may get to the right scale in 2025 when maybe the IPO window opens, new government in the US and things like that. So yeah, let's hope for an IPO. Another prediction would be, I think MTQE should be breaking through more than it already has, because the simple equation is the better machine translation is, the more important MTQE becomes, because you narrow, you have a lot of content, and if 90% of it MTQE judges is accurate, so basically the better MT is, the more important MTQE becomes. And so I do think this is going to be something that we're seeing maybe as a standalone or maybe as kind of a feature as part of a bigger platform. And then final prediction, some super agency is going to get acquired. So that's my prediction 2025. Esther, do you have anything to finalize this?
I don't know if I would call mine a prediction. I think obviously sort of in my area of the business, which is mergers and acquisitions, obviously helping companies to sell and acquire. It's not certain, so it's hard to make predictions, obviously, in research and all of this as well. But I think, just and kind of spinning off what some of you guys are saying as well, like translation as a feature, I think that the result of some of this is you're going to see having an effect on the type of mergers and acquisitions that we're seeing. Florian, you're sort of saying that the TMS market, the TMS layer is positioned to win as the application layer. I think some of this might have an impact on M&A in the sense that perhaps we'll start to see, some consolidation in sort of language technology, maybe some of the more established language technology providers buying smaller sort of add-ons that maybe haven't been able to scale by themselves. That would be, one potential prediction there. And then I think just on the sort of language services side, probably more M&A than what we've seen in 2023 and 2024 as, some language service providers, particularly the smaller ones, or the more sort of niche providers might be struggling to keep up with some of the fast-paced developments that we've seen, and just, generally feel like it's their time to exit. So I think, more M&A and potentially more interesting acquisitions on the technology side.
And if you think it's the right time to exit, get in touch with Esther. She's going to be able to help you.
That's
cool.
right.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sticking around another year with Slater here. That was Slater Pod 2024. We're going to record another 30 episodes in 2025. Maybe if the past is any indication, we're hitting episode 300. What is this? 236. It's been a while. We've been at this for a while. Thanks so much, Esther. Thanks, Anna. And thanks everybody out there for listening and watching.